Hi, and welcome to episode 4 of our little snippet series we've put together. And today we'll be focusing on creating your e-policies with our profile section. So, we're really getting into the thick of it now when it comes to setting up and configuring a portal and allowing the web filter to start applying restriction and rules to your devices. So, we'll be taking a look at the advanced web filter and the YouTube filter part of it, how to build up the environment within your school so that devices are properly managed and students are managed, what they can browse, what they can't browse, to ensure that we are, we're doing our best to ensure that, no inappropriate content is available for students to access. We'll also have a look at how you can manage your iOS devices, how you can lock them down further. I know on Apple Configurator 2 and sometimes on Apple School Manager, it's not very well versed when it comes to locking down devices and restricting devices. So how Mobile Guardian now plugs into this and actually allows you to restrict these devices with our profile section and allow them to act and behave in a certain way during school time. So yeah, let's jump straight on in and head over to our dashboard. So you can see here, once you've logged in, we've gone through, like I said, we visited students, we visited devices, and we're heading over to the profile section. So right here is your profile hub. And there's many ways that you can go about building profiles and building your school environment. What I think the beauty of this product is that it's allowing you to actually replicate your school. We give you the tools to allow you to do this, and how far you take it is entirely up to you. In this environment, for example, you can see I've got a one-to-one environment set up. So when these devices are at school, during these times, and in that geofence that I've set up, excuse me, specific rules and restrictions apply. And when these devices go home, they go into a more relaxed state as devices leave the campus. They can perhaps access YouTube, or perhaps anything to do with Fortnite or something like that. You can configure that from an administrative point of view. What's important to note is that the baseline restriction, the limiting of gambling websites, malicious and violent content, pornography, is always going to be blocked, but you are able to create a more flexible environment for your students. So let's go ahead and create a conditional profile and actually go through this and have a look at kind of what some of the steps. So let's go ahead and say our snippet profile, and obviously a small description. So to be used in our video. And then obviously select the baseline. So the baseline is essentially the safety net amongst everything. So should for example, somebody log in and accidentally delete a restriction that relates to something like pornography, for example, that baseline profile is always set up in the background to make sure that when it comes to things like pornography, gambling, violent content, the real things that should never ever be allowed, that baseline profile is always there as a backup. So even if someone goes ahead and allows it within this filter, that baseline is going to kick in the back and say, oh, it's picked up a mistake, and it's going to block it. So it's a nice safety net. We always suggest never change the baseline profile, allow that to exist as it is, but please, obviously you can make changes then within your conditional profile. So let's go ahead and save it. And we are now in this profile. So if we just have a look at the details of this, you can see obviously this is our snippet profile. This we're going to use in our videos, and it's using the baseline. So let's go and take this a step further, and let's configure this for a school environment. So there's many ways that you can go about restricting and applying profiles. So you can do it via a geofence. So you can obviously select the location of your school, push it down to the device, pick up the area, and if it's within that radius and picks up, it's within those coordinates, it then applies the restrictions to that device. You can also do it via an IP range, for example, where when it picks up a school network and the IP range associated to that network, it will then push the profile down into that device and put it into a restricted mode or whatever mode it needs to be in. Then you can also do it via a time schedule. I always lean away from the time schedule because a student might still be on the school premises at 4 o'clock when it clicks more into that relaxed state. I just feel like it's almost yeah, it's not as powerful as the other two. So either stick to the geofence or to the IP range, whatever you need to do. So we can obviously schedule what times and what schedule we'd like to. So if we want to add a new schedule, we can go ahead and say always on. So let's make this an always on profile. And we can also then almost build it around semesters. So for example, you can set it to start today and we want it to end in, let's say, for example, August 31st, that's how long. And then also we wanted to run Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. This is just the profile that we want on, even though it's going to be running all the time. This is the schedule that we wanted to run on during school. So you can then obviously add that if you would want to, and that schedule then exists at that. So for this example, obviously we don't want that. We want to go ahead and add a geofence, and we want to call it school zone, for example, when devices are at school. And then obviously add the zone. So here's what I was talking about, whether you want to do it via IP range, Wi-Fi and coordinates, or even beacon. Coordinates is to me the most simple because you're just going to put in an address. So let's say, for example, my school is in Table View, for example. And when it picks up it's in this location, it then applies it, and you can obviously make it as big as small as you want, but let's just do that, for example. And then I can apply that profile, I can add it, and then that is the coordinates as it picks up. What's also cool is you can notify the IT admin when this device arrives, as well as when it departs. So if you'd like to know when devices are at the school and leaving the school, you can also set that up on when that happens. And we can now create this zone. And what this now means is that whenever it picks up that this device is within this coordinate, it will then apply the rules that it needs to down onto this device and make sure that it is fully compliant with what your school policy is. And this now exists as it needs to, and then pushes down. We then just go ahead and sync it down to the devices, and it'll then go on. So it's now requested that device, and if you just give it some time, it's now going to push, and you can see now it's currently applying the restrictions that I've put on for this device. So you can see it's picked up which one it needs to be, and it's pushed out what profile it needs to go. So this is now where it starts becoming the kind of variables on what you can do. So obviously there's multiple things we can control. We find that depending on the OS and the type of device, there's different ways that we can go about restricting this device. You'll find on Chromebooks, for example, there's a lot of restrictions and rules that you can apply on the Google console side that you can do it on the console side as opposed to doing it on Mobile Guardian, and you can restrict the devices and lock them down. What I mentioned earlier with Apple and Android and EMM, for example, is that it's built a lot less for those types of restrictions, and that's where Mobile Guardian really comes into its own with Profile, especially on iOS and Android devices. It really takes it up another level in locking these devices. But let's go ahead and have a look at the safe content or web filter. So you can see here, as we go into the web filter for this profile I've now created, you can see snippet profile. You can see now how you can start building out this safe environment and applying your e-policies to devices. So obviously some schools, there are instances where some schools might prefer to not have a web filter running, but they want to log what students are doing, so they can always have that checkup in the background. I would always suggest, in my opinion, to always have the web filter enabled at all times. Make sure that this web filter is always running, it's always out operating in the background. You can always log it as of which it will be doing once the web filter is running. But I think for the most case, just having this web filter on at all times is the best option. But we thought we would just give that option for some schools that perhaps work a bit differently. You also have the ability to automatically toggle safe search for whatever browser they're using. So no matter what browser they're going into, it's applying that profile down to the user and then making sure that when they're on a search engine, that safe browser is on and active and ensuring that they're protected in that sense. And then going on to the features of our add-on, which is our comprehensive web filtering, which is the ability to filter YouTube if you have taken it, and the ability to use the keyword filter that we've obviously used to block keywords across. So very powerful tool. You got to be very careful with the keyword filter because it's very broad, and if you just put a broad term in, you might find that you're going to be blocking quite a few things. So always at this stage, perhaps reach out to us for some extra advice so we can assist you as you go along with that. So you can see now the ability of what this profile tool is giving you to really lock down your environment, to really build that safe environment, build your environment at the end of the day. So as we can go on, as we continue this, you'll see how it kind of starts building out. So you can now default a specific landing page for these devices. So every time they go ahead and hit Chrome, Safari, Mozilla, Internet Explorer, heaven forbid, you can actually go and set it. So let's say, for example, I want each device every time they log on to land on mobileguardian.com. Just a HTTPS. So obviously like that. You can then where it needs to be, and then let's say, for example, if something is blocked or they reach a blocked website, I always want them to go to google.com. Once again, just important to add the HTTPS and the backs and the forward. Yeah, and then obviously you can then also lock down ratings. So for example, if in Great Britain, you can lock down the device that it's only accessible for movies with 12A rating, as well as TV shows. You can allow, don't allow TV shows or caution on that. And then also age restrict apps at the same time and make sure that, you know, depending on the environment, it can only be users, you know, up to 12 plus. And you can then save those filters, and then this will apply it down to the devices. So once your filter is working, you can obviously start testing and making sure that it's applying. So let's go ahead and have a look at an example. So let's take AAA.com. AAA is a gambling site. And let's see what happens when we test this. So right now, it is not currently filtered because we haven't gone ahead and actually set up our whitelist and blacklist. So you can see that right now, this is not filtered. So let's go ahead, head over to the whitelist and blacklist, and let's start building out our restrictions. So you can decide on anything. So whether you want something specific blocked or nothing blocked, if you want minimal restrictions, as for example, blocking only potentially harmful content, and it's just kind of existing in the background, quite open with the students, but you still want to make sure that they can't access, you know, illicit content, and that will then apply in the background. Moderate, so for example, it will then protect you against all adult-related sites, so perhaps news sites. If you don't want kids accessing news sites, irrelevant news sites and stuff like that, you can get restrictive. And then obviously high, which is very restrictive, blocking all harmful content and adults. So let's go ahead and take a moderate setting. And what this will actually do, it will then apply a profile that, or apply a restriction list that we've pre-configured, that will block against these categories here. So you can see our whitelist is built up between blacklist and whitelist, and obviously you can build up your school environment with that. So you can see on the moderate filter right here, it's blocking now adults in all subcategories: sales, adult images, hosting of IPs, matchmaking, gambling, substance abuse, and so on and so on. You can further this with the list here and actually go through it and block anything else that you might want to. So sex education, if you wanted to, anything to do with health, general news, games, audio and video streaming, you can apply that. You might want to, for example, here, allow, for example, you know, web email. Maybe you don't mind students being able to access their personal email. You can add that whitelist category if you wanted to, so it exists there. And then obviously from here, it's kind of it's kind of letting it exist and seeing where the problems come in. So you might find that because of this sales or something, one of these product categories stopping something, you might find it might block a website that you would usually use. I always suggest in that side, either you can just ask the students to notify you, or if it is a website that they need to access, they'll actually get an option to say, notify your administrator that you'd like access, and it will actually pop up right here and you'll be able to gather whether this is a legitimate site or if you would like to continue blocking it. So it'll come up as an option. You can whitelist or blacklist it or keep it as it is as you need to. So it's really going to take a little bit of time just to build this as you need to. And I'm going to be honest, there are going to be instances where it might block something it shouldn't, but like I said, you'll overcome this and just continue to evolve this web filter until it gets to a point where it's pretty much running as it needs to be. You can also blacklist specific URLs or whitelist specific URLs. So for example, anything to do with substance abuse, it needs to be out. Anything to do with any sign of drugs or illicit medication and stuff like that is always blocked. However, maybe for the year 7s or the grade 7s, there's classes in life orientation about the dangers of substance abuse and what to do and the dangers of drug abuse and all that. You can actually whitelist specific websites for those specific classes if you want to. So going back to the profiles, you can build profiles for each year and make each year different and accessible to different websites as you need to. So you might find that, like I said, with substance abuse, you can whitelist specific websites for them that they can then go on during that class and do the research that they need to do. So you're able to whitelist and blacklist. So let's jump back. And if all's gone well, let's see now that I've added the gambling, what happens with that. And you can see now that the web filter is applied. Before it was allowing it, it's now blocking it because it's gambling websites and it's related to adults and subcategories as well as security. So you can see now that it's beginning to start applying these restrictions to devices. So the students try to go in on their device now, it is not accessible and they are not able to access it. So let's try another one. Let's say, for example, www. Let's do Playboy, playboy.com, and let's test that. And you can see, once again, a subcategory, adult, and it will blacklist. And at the same time, you can whitelist and blacklist here if you needed to. If it shouldn't have been blocked, you are able to test. And perhaps specific links that you use, you can then test this as you need to. So, like I said, it's a great tool to build up your unique school's environment. Build it as you need to. If you want to be more restrictive, if you want to be less restrictive, it is entirely up to you. It's entirely up to you how far you would like to take and how strong you would like this to be. So with just moving on to the YouTube filter, the more part of our comprehensive web filter add-on, this gives you the ability to actually lock down YouTube and control how students use YouTube. So perhaps you would like them to use YouTube in the class. You're actually able to restrict specific channels, allow specific channels, block specific users, block specific videos on the YouTube side of it. So as soon as students log on, it makes sure that in the background, it's controlling what they can and can't watch. So I'm going to take an example. So you can see here, for example, there's the categories that you would find on YouTube. So auto and vehicles, comedy, education, entertainment, so on and so on. You can obviously whitelist and blacklist to your heart's content, any specific categories. And over here, you do want that. You can block everything else and only allow education content, so you can push that through. But also, you'll find sometimes on YouTube, not everything's categorized correctly. And if you are looking to block specific content, you do also have that option. So you'll see here, you can block specific channels as well as specific videos. So on channels, I would always suggest is, obviously, I'm going to use Jake Paul here. He's obviously I guess, influencer and entertainer. And what you can do is, if you go hover over his name, right click, copy the link address, you'll see that it'll then provide that. You can head over and actually block Jake Paul from the school. So let's say if something's miscategorized and that kids are able to access their videos, you can actually block his channel from the top level so that none of his videos are now accessible, as well as whitelisting any channel. So the same procedure for whitelisting, and then even one step further, blocking specific videos. So sometimes, it's always possible. Some things always get through, and kids are quite smart when it comes to this. You're also able to adapt this on the fly and whitelist and blacklist specific videos as you need to. So a very cool tool to allow YouTube, because it is a powerful tool, YouTube, within the school environment. The amount of educational videos, the amount of content that's there to help kids with mathematics, English, whatever they're studying, it is available and it is a great tool. So it just gives you, once again, that ability to lock it down and control it. And then obviously, lastly, just the keyword settings and applying keyword restrictions across. Now, obviously, there's a whole bunch of words that we predefined before. So you can also add custom keywords. But like I said in the beginning, making keywords too restricted can result in unexpected sites being blocked. So just be sure to check the URL tester to validate your changes. So if you add any specific keywords, go in to the URL tester and make sure the websites that you know teachers need to access are still available. So it's just a great blanket way of locking down specific categories. So you could maybe block Fortnite down, for example, and every time they try and access something like Fortnite, it'll block it. You know, there was a time when I think it was that Momo challenge that was going around on YouTube. You can put that keyword in and it will then block it down. But you can see that it is a blanket approach. So we always advise caution when it comes to keywords, but it's also a great way to lock down your environment. So now we can see that we have our categories running, we've built it as we need to. If we head back, we can now see we've applied specific filters to our devices as we need to. So that is essentially the way to lock down how these devices can be used when browsing the internet and lock down what students can and can't access during it. So very, very important, and also very, very flexible and bespoke in how you can recreate your environment with that tool. So just to switch over a bit to iOS and Android for a minute, you can also see how you can further lock down devices in the profile, devices from the profile section here when it comes to Apple and Android. So you can see here, you can have some general restrictions, so disabling the camera, hiding location, hide SSID, as well as taking it a bit further with iOS control. So for example, you can block cloud services, you can block device modification. Under this, you can, block more specific things. So breaking this down as you want to. If you look here, the App Store is disabled and its icons removed from the home screen. So you can now really start locking down iOS devices, which you never really had the ability to do before, straight from the Apple side. So just make sure that obviously, as you make these changes, make sure that it works and also that these devices are in a supervised state. And then obviously, if you need to then go through that method, you can just follow the instructions as you need to. And you can really go ahead and lock down these devices to your heart's content and use them and let them exist in a way you want them to. You can even switch off Safari, for example. If you only want them to use Chrome, you can allow them to just use Chrome. Same with Android. As you go through, you can see you can disable, and once you have your EMM configured and it's synced across, you'll have a lot more options to lock down Android devices. Disable text messaging, for example, receiving text or phone calls. If it's school provided with SIM cards, you can really lock down those devices, which is great. You can even set device Wi-Fi that it needs to connect with. So there's only one device. Instead of having students know passwords, you can just connect those devices automatically, which is awesome. And that's then how you can obviously lock these devices down further. And then you can take it further with passcode restrictions as well. Oh, sorry, I went to the wrong one. That was just configuring the Wi-Fi. Passcode, where you can enforce, and I've done it again, where you can enforce passcode policies down to devices. So minimum passcode lengths, maximum, anything you want in any way you want these devices existing, you can push it down centrally and apply these changes to make sure your devices are always locked down. So really, really powerful tool. I think this is what starts setting us apart from our competition, is how we allow schools to build these profiles that get pushed down to the devices that sync down and then control these devices. And I think, the more you use MobileGuard and the more you start building your profiles, the more you can expand it. We have some schools that have one profile, one or two profiles that they want to run. And we have schools that have profiles for every single year, and then different restrictions for each year. So for example, some schools and each year they have access to different applications, and you can actually build that into the way it's set up and make sure that it syncs down. So a lot to take in. Give it a go, have a look and see, what would work for your school, and try it out. And please, if you have any questions around it after this, give me a shout. My email address is right here, and I'll be more than happy to spend some time setting up your profile with you, seeing what works, what doesn't work, and how we can get you into an environment where your school is fully protected. So look forward to seeing you in the next episode. We'll be going over applications with Mobile Guardian and just centrally managing applications from the portal, pushing down applications from a central cloud point of view, as opposed to on each device, and managing any changes from that. So looking forward to seeing you for that. Have a great day. Cheers.